I'm very happy to chair this fireside chat, and with me are two very interesting speakers. The first of whom is going to be Vishrut Srivastava, who is the managing director of YodaPlus Technologies. A very interesting and illustrious career, both as a mentor of fintechs and also as an investor in a lot of fintech technology. And I could call our own blockchain guru as well. It was a great pleasure chatting up with you leading up to this session, and look forward to hearing your thoughts. So we have our second speaker, who's going to be Vishal Kanvaty, and he's the head of innovation at NPCI. He did come from a background of launching a lot of fintechs, being a core part of the innovation before taking this role as head of innovation with NPCI. Welcome, Vishal. Um, Vishrut, maybe we'll just have a conversation because embedded finance is something that's getting a lot of airspace and print space a lot these days, and we've all been working in parts of it directly, indirectly, etc. Simply speaking, going by the definition, all it means is how non financial services are providing financial services. But it's just a very broad definition and it means a lot of things to a lot of us. For me, it could be lending. For you, it could be blockchain. It could be payments. It could be investments. So it's a whole lot of things. So I thought we would take a minute to kind of demystify that and talk about a few use cases from your experience. That would be lovely to share with the audience.
Sure, sure. Thank you very much, Jaya, for the introduction. So, embedded finance, in my opinion, as you said, it's a very broad term, and it's a way to offer and bundle various kinds of financial services for companies and applications that are not in this space. They're in a different domain. But why do they do it? Is because you have customer retention, you have customer satisfaction, and you have a differentiating factor. So, for example, our product, the YodaPlus multi-signature vault, helps secure and provide safe custody for digital assets such as XDC tokens, stable coins, CBDCs, and security tokens. And now there are hundreds of billions of dollars in stable coins lying idle in wallets such as these, right? And there's
Yeah,
a huge demand for yield. So
correct.
what we have done in YodaPlus multi-sig vault is that to differentiate ourselves, we have created a pipe with a platform called TradeFinex, which is operated by the XDC network. And what we are doing is we are offering our customers investment opportunities in yield generating tokens that are backed by trade finance instruments. So this is a fantastic way for the YodaPlus multi-sig vault to retain to and delight its customers as well as to differentiate itself from the other competition.
That's wonderful to hear. And there is also a lot of crowding in this segment, in terms of a lot of non-financial players coming in, and you see a lot of people doing a little bit of each of that, and not all of it. So where do you see the roadmap in terms of the specific use case that you spoke about? Because there's a lot of ground to be covered and miles to go before we sleep. And as we speak, it's just not India, but it's the whole ecosystem from around the world that's inventing little bits and pieces all around. So, would love to hear a little bit more thoughts into where you see that going. And probably I'll just add a little bit on what I see as well. So, go ahead.
Sure. So I think we're just in the infancy. I mean, see, in India at least, there we are waiting for direction, and I think uh, in this winter session we'll have direction. I am sure the government will come out with a clear policy. But once that happens, regardless of what the decision is, even CBDCs, the central bank digital coins, even if even they come into, even they need a secure wallet. And what we are doing is we provide multiple owners of the vault. So you transact. You can only transact when two or more owners approve a transaction,
Yeah.
right? So, so this is the core product. This is going to stay. And then what is the added benefit we can provide? The added benefit is yield. Everyone wants yield. They won't know how to generate yield out of this. So that is where we create pipes, and that's where embedded finance comes in. And I think this is a very promising area. It is bound to grow, uh, there's going to be a very pent up demand for it once there
Right.
is clarity.
That's great. And in all of that, when we talk about fintech, we just, even there, we are still scratching the surface because we are just talking about largely payments or B2C. And there's a lot of applicability onto the B2B segment as well as we grow along. And a lot of innovation that is going to happen along that, which kind of looks at the core of transformation rather than surface of transformation. So I think there's a lot more to happen. I'm so happy, Vishal, that you could join us. And I did the introduction, but I think the first question that we were just chatting about with Vishrut was more in terms of demystification of embedded finance. And you have come from a background of being in fintechs and then moved on to NPCI and working with innovation, where you will have a bird's eye view of pretty much a lot of what's happening around that. And so, would love to hear your thoughts on some interesting, innovative use cases that you're seeing in embedded finance, and directionally, where do you think that's going?
Sure. Thanks, Jaya. And I think apologies for the technical challenge.
No problem.
So I think if I look back at embedded finance, I think at the core of it, it is basically reducing all the friction that's there, either in payments or any of the banking operations, right? It's how do we solve the challenges, whether it's a distribution and making it convenient, cheaper for the customers, right? And that's where if you look at the whole UPI journey, uh, is where I think we have seen a lot of these use cases coming in. It's all the payments part of it where we have seen a lot of use cases where we embedded the payments along with the use case that person wants to do, and it's I think as previously said, like people don't want to do payments. There is an inherent use case behind that. I want to travel or I want to eat at a restaurant. So how do we actually completely remove the whole friction? And we have seen with UPI and the opening of payments, how this has been made it so simple for everyone to use it, right? And that for me is the core of embedded finance. And simple things like paying for your cab, and we talked about Uber experience, right, in the past. Can I do the same thing for on the payments? And I think we have done to a reasonable extent on UPI.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of frameworks that are coming up, whether it's account aggregator or a lot of the policies around digital banking, payment banks, I think this will get into almost all aspects of the banking, from lending to working capital financing, and various aspects of it. Like I think we are seeing a lot of initiatives around trade finance, supply chain financing. How do we
Yeah.
reduce the friction and the challenges in each of them? And that's for me is a truly embedded finance.
Wonderful. So we are all waiting with bated breath on what's going to happen in the winter session that's coming up now. Anything top of your wish list in terms of specifically our area of work, and what do you think some of the implications that you're looking out for, be it from data privacy to what's shaping the world around us? Uh, what are your major asks, or what are you really looking forward to?
Yeah.
Vishal, maybe, and
Yeah,
Vishrut
yeah.
after that. Yeah,
No, I think on the data privacy, I think I definitely think that it's been something that's um, we are eagerly waiting, and it's something that I think would clarify a lot of challenges and whatever I would say the confusion around the whole part. But I think it is one step where I would say it sets us in the right direction and removes all of the challenges that we face and the confusion we face today. And I think that's definitely I think it would set the base, around data protection, what customers need to share, and what's sensitive. So I think it makes it easy, and I think it clarifies. I think it sets, because today I think a lot of us are in that confusion, especially the
yeah,
fintechs. Can we do this? Can we not do this? And who is answerable for that? And I think the the bill essentially sets the base for everyone to now have a standard here. and follow that. And I think it's in the right direction.
Wonderful. Vishrut, your
Yeah,
asks. I know we
sure.
can say probably a lot of things and still get away with it.
Yeah, sure. So, see, there are regulatory challenges which demand a clear and definitive direction. I think the government is taking the right steps in this parliament session and in the bill that ensues. Uh, we are going to get a clear policy. There has to be regulation of the crypto assets. Definitely, there has to be more responsible advertising, but it is a great technology, and we should not fall behind the other countries. So uh, so I am looking forward to the bill, and regardless of what the outcome is, the fact that the government has a stand and it says, okay, this is what needs to be done. It makes things much easier for us to operate in that environment.
Wonderful. Of late, we're seeing a lot of unicorns emerge from the fintech larger space. So, what do you think is directionally going to happen from an India perspective on unicorns in embedded finance? Are we going to see the next biggies coming from India? If so, what are you seeing? I'm asking Vishrut probably will go first on this and then Vishal, because you've been mentoring a lot of startups in this area. So,
Right.
what's your view? What are you seeing? Maybe some things that we can share with the audience on these are things that you watch out for. And love to hear from Vishal as well right after on what is he seeing from where he is, and what are things that are coming up next.
Sure. So I see three very interesting areas where I think unicorns can come up. One is obviously blockchain, which I operate in.
Yeah,
As I said, there's a demand for yield for all the holdings that is there. So that is definitely one space. Then in B2B side, in SaaS platforms, the HRMS solutions. So HRMS is doing regular attendance leaves, payroll processing and so on. But you know, in the course of the business, they can offer to the employees that are using the system. They can offer them financial services in the to save on taxes, or to do tax planning and similar things. So I think that value add would really come up. We use a HRMS platform called Teamnest, and we are very happy with it. And I think that has a lot of potential. Neobanks, there was a session just before this on
yeah,
neobank. So I have been associated with a application called Winvesta. So they're a
yeah,
global neobank. They started out as a startup which was for helping Indians invest in overseas stocks, in US stocks. Now they have diversified. They're using these APIs for banking. They're using APIs for brokerage. They're using APIs for remittance, and they have bundled it all together, and they're doing very well. And yeah, so I think these are the three areas where I think there definitely will be unicorns coming out.
and part of embedded finance and the popularity also stems from the fact that it is truly going to be the one that's shaping inclusivity. And in a country like India, that is all that matters because it's
Yeah,
more about access to the last mile.
yeah,
And it's also our population, right? So once you have access to a lot more people, then we're going to solve a lot of the issues in terms of fairness, right?
right.
Social justice. So, Vishal, also when you talk about unicorns, what you see as well as what you see from an inclusion perspective. Would love to hear a lot more on this trend of embedded finance and how it's directionally impacting the inclusion component of it.
Sure. So Jay, on the first one, I definitely see a lot of unicorns coming in the lending space, and
Right.
lending space where I think they drive around payments, for the data and also the tech part of it, right? So whether it's a
Yeah.
blockchain or AI ML, I think these are the two techs where, I mean, in the lending, it's basically, it's not about lending, it's about collection. Are you able to
Correct.
lend to the right person and collect it from there, right?
Yeah.
So, and for there, from that perspective, I think the tech becomes very, very important. And if you are able to, target the right segment and do it in a way where the distribution is simpler. So, I think for me, I think these are the areas where we will see more and more unicorns coming in. And I think now it's all about the complete app, so providing all the uh, all the services on one part, one app. So I think that's another trend that I'm seeing. And as you said, I think rightly pointed out, I think we cannot ignore the Bharat part of it, right? So
Yeah,
I think some of these solutions that we are looking at, and that's where I think the tech plays a very important role, whether it's the feature phone payments or the offline payments, and doing it in a very natural way, right? I think, and the voice assistance part of it. I think these are the additional tech solutions that I think will pay a huge take us to that, or addressing the market in the Bharat segment. And uh, I think the focus plus I think if you are able to get the right technology, like I mean, I'm seeing a lot of solutions around the voice assistance part of it, where I think a lot of people don't are not very comfortable with pins, or the other ways in which you take the authentication from a customer. So the assistance part in the segment, and maybe authorization at some point, using your voice is something that I think will catch up. and
yeah.
and I'm seeing a path on that direction, where I think it will become much easier for people to do their transactions. And so I think these are the broad counters on which we are looking at addressing the segment in Bharat as well.
I think since we're on the Bharat aspect of it, a lot of what we're seeing of late, even in terms of the unicorns, etc., is more the local focus rather than the global focus. Because we've always been at the tail end of innovation, right? I mean, we get a lot of the Ubers happened outside, and we did our own version of Uber, in different forms. But this kind of innovation around inclusion is going to be the Bharat component is going to be, I think, a big page turner in terms of creating it local and launching it global, right? So, more thoughts, especially on the local flavor versus the global flavor. What's the right ratio? Are products really, do you see companies design with saying, I'm going to be local, I'm going to be global, or is it like a concept, or is it a pivot on technology and saying, what can this technology do? Or it's like a use case, right? I mean, that's the bottom line of what we're talking about in terms of local versus global. Some thoughts on where you see, because this is something that's going to shape the industry at large, and India is a forefront of that transformation. Would love to hear. I mean, especially from a product company perspective, right, the larger one, as to how things are directionally going. Maybe Vishal, you can start, and then Shrut, you can just add to it. I'm just, yeah,
Sure.
going in the direction.
So Jay, I think it's a mix, that we have seen, right? I think in India we have seen Uber being successful, but as well be equally successful Ola, which is doing well.
Yeah,
But I think the concept itself, I think there's been a lot of customizations that have been done to suit the requirements. And in India itself, India is a very complex market
yeah,
itself, in itself, and each of the regions are very different, right? So from this Bharat concept, I see. I think it has to be little focused, and uh, you cannot simply copy the model and sort of implement here, right? I think, and the experience shown is it doesn't work. It's
yeah,
you need to be very specific to the use case, as well as bring in a lot of the local flavors that are required to address the market. Because I think the security and the confidence, convenience, these are the key aspects which can come in. And a lot of times we have seen, even like in the other pay sort of model, the assistance is always required. I think people look forward to that and are willing to pay an extra buck to get that confidence, saying that a transaction has gone through, right? So these are the flavors that come in, which are very different across within India itself. We have various flavors. So I think you can have the core tech component, which is like you can build on top of it, but the larger innovations around the front ending of that would need a lot more customization and flexibility. And that's where I think your tech has to address some of those nuances, and how do we address some it could be very minor things, but very important for success of the products in that region. And that's where I think you need to build that flexibility in your product to address to those nuances, and you cannot have like one size fits all, and the core tech can be something you can aspire to build over a period of time, but it needs to be very focused and addressing the nuances in each of those segments that you need to take care, which are very successful, which are critical for the success of the products.
Right. Thank you. Vishrut, over to you.
Yeah, sure. So see, as far as B2C is concerned, I feel that India is a very different market.
Yeah.
So as Vishal rightly pointed out, there even the form factor or the devices used are different. It's mobile first in India. Ease, simplicity are more important. Language, vernacular is a very important factor. So in B2C, India itself is a very large opportunity. Bharat is a large opportunity. I think if you're going B2C, you have to focus on that
Yeah.
and not worry about going global at this point of time and doing everything for everybody. In B2B is slightly different because B2B we are seeing a lot of B2B SaaS startups, software as a service platforms coming out, which can go global. They can today you have to have a website, you have to have the right digital marketing, you have to have the right outreach, and you could do that. For example, something that can start in India and still go out is, see, HRM is for blue collar, blue collar workers,
Hmm.
where you embed finance in the HRMS and you give blue collar workers, options. You give them options to get included into the financial system. That is something that could potentially also go outside because blue collar workers will be there outside also. Their behavior may be slightly different, but the HRMS platform could still be used. So that's my 2 cents on the globalization.
Wonderful. What do you think are the biggest kind of showstoppers or things that could kind of completely change the game from this, or challenges to adoption? You could kind of look at it in any form or fashion. Earlier session with Shalini, which she was talking about, Frio he was talking about, my dad doesn't go to trust any of what I do. So, in a sense, he still wants to have that face to face interaction. So, as much as we rely on technology, it's a people business. So, what do you think are some of the challenges like that, or something more, either from a regulatory space, from a adoption, phase, or from the general ecosystem in saying, I don't have these, I have these missing pieces, and that is an evolution game, and we need to wait and watch. So, what would be the big things that you would kind of categorize that? Vishrut, maybe we can start with you, and Vishal going next. And I think there are a couple of questions from the audience as well. So
Yeah.
after this, maybe I'll just get into that.
Yeah, so I have the same problem with my dad also. He also he faces a lot of challenge
Yeah,
with
same here.
mobile. And so, but I think the solution to that is a simpler, a different UI. The Bharat needs a different user interface, a different experience. Voice is very important, as pointed out by Vishal. Vernacular is a very important element in that. Um, so I think these are the areas a startup should focus on when they're serving Bharat. And if you crack it, then then you hit the bullseye.
Vishal,
Yep, I
I know
think.
you have a different set of challenges, so would love to
Yep.
hear from you in terms of what do you see. Um,
Well, I think I think fundamentally, I think the biggest challenge would be the trust, regaining the trust of customers in any of these platforms, right? Because once we lose the trust on the Bharat segment, it could be any challenge like the data leaks, or the password being tampered, any misuse of the transactions. We have seen people don't come back on the platform at all, and
yeah,
irrespective of so the opportunity you get to take the trust from the customers is only once, and if you have any challenges on the subsequent ones, you're done. I think that's the biggest challenge that I see, because the awareness, and it's easy. I mean, it's easy to for something to go wrong in this segment, especially in the payments part, we have seen that, right? Uh, it's quite easy for someone to figure out any loophole and then work upon it, and the losses could be tremendous, right? But while we can fix a lot of those issues over a period of time, I think we have seen it's very difficult to get back the trust, and that's where I think we have to build the solutions which will work in, and we have to factor in a lot of these things. Like some of the times we have seen in some of the solutions where we ignore simple things like, okay, this is a scenario which is very difficult to happen, and we had a practical experience of that, and that scenario happened in actual production, and after that it was very difficult to get that. So I think we should be very very careful on some of these aspects, especially on the infosec security part, and how some of this risk can be mitigated, and if you don't address it, I think it would be a big challenge. So that's what I would say could be something that we need to be very very watchful.
I think the last couple of questions are going to be completely change of track because we are getting a lot of questions from some of the young people who are looking to getting into an entrepreneurial journey. Since you come from a background of innovation, startups, etc., the questions are probably, I'll ask a different question of each of you because, the questions are going to be more on personal experiences and how do you get into doing what you did. So, one of the questions, I think I'll shoot this out, Vishrut. One of our younger participants wants to know about sharing some insights on zero budget marketing fundamentals. It's about, I have a great idea. How do you actually market that? And how do I take it to market is something that they would love to hear from you.
Sure. So zero budget marketing is something we all wish for,
Yeah,
but it is something that is very difficult. So what you have to do is you have to optimize your budget. You don't have to do zero budget. You have to optimize the budget for marketing. How can you optimize? See, take a very simple example of a traditional example of TV ad space. There is it is going to be played for a certain amount of time, and that's it, right? Now, what do you communicate in that? That is the hack. You have to communicate the right message. So it's the same. It's same as traditional advertising, same in digital marketing, same in startup marketing. You have to find the right communication. You have to find the right message, and you have to spend. There's no doubt you have to spend, but you have to spend intelligently, and you have to fine tune. There are a lot of ways to do it today. It's there's data, there's analytics. You get feedback. You have to be smart, basically.
great. We have a question from Tanya, and that is more in terms of I'm going to ask Vishal this question to you. And it's a question, it's a longer question, but I'm just going to summarize that for you. It's more in terms of it's easy to convince your own family to say, I'm going to go into a corporate job. It's easy to start something entrepreneurial or kind of say that I'm going to do something in an area, let's say embedded finance. How was your journey like? How did you get into the entrepreneurial track before you got to do what you're doing? And was it very difficult from a family perspective? It's a question more, some of the questions that are coming are more about an exploratory personal journey perspective. So I wanted to ask that as well.
Sure, Jaya. I think it is definitely difficult to convince a family, especially when you have a comfortable corporate and then saying, maybe for the next year I don't have anything, earning to take care, and I'll live on my savings. So it's obviously a risk that you have, but I think one of the critical step is to plan for it, and keep a uh, timeline for which you can say, okay, this is where I'll take care of it, and this is how I'll work. And I think we see a lot of success, but I think a huge percentage where it won't happen, right? So I think it's important to be obsessed with the idea, but have a very defined timelines to say this is what I'll do, and if you are not achieving those things, then it's a time for you to uh, relocate it and replan your things. Otherwise, if you'll 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 if you end up doing this for infinite time, you'll never be able to focus on it. So
Yeah.
It's important to have a very time bound plan and the time bound focus, and the milestones which are very very granular, saying okay, this is where I'll have the so much run rate, and this is where I'll at least have the investments. And I think what's important is attraction. I think your idea to the traction, and are you getting the right team to support that.
Yeah.
uh, I think these are some of those things where you need to be very very uh, you know planned, and have those milestones very proper. And it need not be necessarily in monetary terms. It's like, are you expanding your team, are you getting the right uh, talent to take this? Because if you are not able to execute, you will have a bigger challenge convincing your investors as well. So I think
Right.
some of those milestones are very important from my perspective.
I think, in terms of conclusion as well, Tanya, let me add my 2 cents. I think it's harder to convince yourself than convince others, because once you're convinced, that conviction will follow to everybody, whether it's your family or your investors. And I think it's a harder journey once you've been in a corporate and then want to switch from grounds up and start doing everything yourself in an entrepreneurial journey. I think you will have a greater start if you're starting grounds up as a fresher. So I think you've not had the experience of having a comfort on certain factors to kind of get into a zone of discomfort. So I think it's a great start that way. Thank you very much, Vishrut and Vishal, and
Thank
it
you,
was a
Jaya.
pleasure
Thank you for
chatting
that.
with you.
Thank you, Jaya. Thanks, Vishal.